Hey guys, it's Rainey Romero with the lovely law firm and the Carolina Justice Report. I'm here with attorneys Sarah Austin and Amy Lawrence, and today we're talking about a hot topic that affects all of the medical community.
You know, in civil cases, these are the cases that really keep us up at night, because when you have an entity, and it's usually, we see it in police departments, we see it in med-mal cases. My brother-in-law's a doctor, okay? And one of the first things I tell him is, if you make a mistake, you look that family in the eye. I said, your insurance is not gonna like this, okay? Mm-hmm. Your hospital is not gonna like this, but you look that family in the eye and you tell them that you're sorry, that it was a mistake, because we can all wrap our mind around a human mistake, right? We all make mistakes. And it's the acceptance of that responsibility and the need to fix it. If 90% of med-mal cases would never come to fruition if somebody just looked at people and said, I'm sorry, this was a horrible mistake and it keeps me up at night. I'm gonna make sure it's fixed and it never happens to another family.
And I think that she did that, and then look what happened to her.
Right.
Well, she wasn't able to say it to the family,
She couldn't say it to the family, you know what I mean? They had to find out later.
But she went through the proper channels to let people know that it was done.
And so what happens is Vanderbilt, instead of looking at that family in the eye and saying, I'm so sorry this happened in the very beginning, this is a system failure and we're gonna fix it, instead they cover it up.
Well, they ultimately let her take the fall for it. I know that there was probably a big settlement. I'm not sure how much it was. Yeah. But they ultimately, it seems like, let her take the fall for it. Yeah. At least in the news, when you read about it, it seems like it was her fault.
I mean, when you were talking about someone's health care and hospitals, why are we implementing a new system that doesn't work, mm-hmm. right? Why would you not run shadow systems to make sure they work before we all the way before we take out the old one?
Right.
These are the things that are going on that should have never happened. Mm-hmm. All the safeguards that should have been in place weren't, and no one took any responsibility for that in the beginning. Instead, they tried to cover it up.
Right.
And we see that all the time, and it drives me absolutely bonkers.
It just reminded me a lot of like the dram shop cases we'll have, or even car accidents when the drivers are criminally charged, and that's great and all, but what does putting that person behind bars really do?
Yeah.
And then you have, because we'll even have clients get so like, I want them locked up forever. But then at the end of the day, that doesn't really make anybody feel any better. But, you know, when the bars are over-serving people, that's the problem. You know, on the waterway, everybody's drunk boating, and where are they getting this alcohol from?
It's systemic, and we need to get to the root of it to fix it.
So how do you make sure it never happens again? It just kind of like all comes back to that. And for me, it all comes back to the hospital, because I think the consequences of this, of her being criminally charged and sentenced to, I hope, probation, and not, I hope she doesn't have to go to jail.
I think that's everybody's prayer, right?
Is that nurses are going to be afraid, and hospitals aren't going to. The correct response would be hospitals giving nurses more resources, right? Because they're already understaffed and they're tired, and it's a pandemic, and fixing those systems so that they can work better. But instead, the consequences are going to be nurses are afraid, and they're a little gun shy when they think that this is the right course of treatment for a patient. They're not going to want to override. When they mess up, they're not going to want to report it. And so I think it's just going to be.
Well, that's why this case is blown up so
Mm-hmm.
much, because nurses across the country are zoned in on it, on holy cow, this is me, I am RaDonda, and they relate, and they just cannot believe that she has been put in this situation.
Well, the thing is overriding medication is something that happens every day, every shift, all the time, especially in emergency situations. And now, if I were a nurse and I was in an emergency situation and a doctor told me to order something and it wasn't in that system, I'd tell them no.
Yeah.
If there is something that will risk my life and liberty, and the time I have with my children, and I just wouldn't do it. I'd say, I'm sorry, I cannot until you put it in that system. The answer is no.
Right.
And it's sad that this person is, coding or doing whatever is happening, but I can't. We've pigeonholed them to not be able to practice medicine and to help.
So this happened in Tennessee, and of course her license was taken away. And, so recently she was charged with a couple of things and found guilty. So that was negligence of an impaired adult, and then also, what is it, a negligent homicide? Is that kind of what it's called?
Yeah, what it boils down to,
yeah.
So, she has these charges. She is not being sentenced until May. So we'll find out I don't know, is that when it's sentenced, does she definitely get time, or do you think, can they take that away too?
I think that it can carry probation. There's not a minimum jail time sentence, but I think that it speaks volumes on what's going on in Tennessee and also with Vanderbilt. I mean, we know that the prosecutor in this case was a Vanderbilt professor that brought these charges. We had a victim's family who did not want the charges to be brought to begin with. And when you see that, when a victim or a victim's family doesn't want, that's just unheard of. You know what I mean? I mean, I've seen clemency for people on death row because a family has asked for it. Do you know what I mean? Because that's where ultimate responsibility lies. You know what I mean? Because punishing her and sending her to prison does nothing. Doesn't make the world a better place. It doesn't take a criminal off the streets.
Right.
It doesn't do anything except punish, and then it puts the fear of God into every other nurse that comes after her.
I mean, I always thought, you know, I'm of course somebody without a law background, and so I always thought if the family didn't want to do anything, there really was no case.
Well, normally that's how it is.
Yeah, that normally is how
So
it is.
I don't understand how.
It makes you wonder if the hospital was pushing for the charges in the first place.
Right, and that's
which is
what
I
a
thought.
lot of the allegations, have been. That's what the speculation's been, is that Vanderbilt's behind this.
Because they don't want people to be afraid to go there. you
Yeah,
know. If there was
right.
a big system failure, they've done nothing to fix the system. They don't, you know, it's easier to blame one person, like I
Yeah,
said.
she's taking the fall for them. It's terrible.
Life gets ugly, just